Hi everyone, I've got a new device to try out today. I just bought a GameStick. Now this is an Android TV console, and a lot of you are going to say that, this is old news, this product was released quite a while ago. And they're right about that, because this started its life as a Kickstarter project, and I did not back that Kickstarter. I didn't back it because I thought that the device was kind of dumb, and I gotta say that I held a little bit of a grudge because I felt that the advertising campaign was very stupidly done. They, as I recall, they were saying that this is a portable game system, and it was a nice little buzzword to throw around. It was a nice one to try to get backers, but overall, I mean, this is not what you think of when you think of portable game system. When you're thinking about something that's portable in gaming, you think about Game Boy or, PS Vita, 3DS, something like that. You don't think about something like this where you have to plug it into a TV. So, in other words, when people say portable gaming, you expect to be able to play it while it is portable, while it's on the go. But either way, so they had that problem. A second problem I had with it was that I felt that the Kickstarter campaign was a little deceptive, because the issue is that this is actually made by a company called PlayJam, and they're actually a big corporation, not the biggest of course, but they're sizable enough to where the Kickstarter goal was really just a drop in the bucket. It really seems like this device would have been made whether that Kickstarter failed or not, and so basically when you gave your money to this Kickstarter project, it wasn't in order to make the device, it was more or less you were just pre-ordering your product, And so that's kind of my example of a bad Kickstarter project. In the last episode where you saw a Kickstarter project for the Untold History of Japanese Game Developers, that in my opinion is a pure Kickstarter project, the way that it should be done, where that book would never have come out if it didn't get funded. So this guy, he needed the funds so that way he could go to Japan and interview these developers, and that way the book can come into existence. This thing though, they were just capitalizing on the recent Ouya Kickstarter project where they just broke records. I think it was like $8 million that Ouya got. And so I think that they were trying to replicate that success. I'll have to look up and see how much money they got. By that I mean GameStick. But I know that it wasn't anywhere near Ouya, and the product, it hasn't really taken off, so to speak. Alright, so when this was on Kickstarter, I didn't back it because I thought it was incredibly dumb. But now I have purchased one because it's incredibly cheap. It seems that they're having some sort of a fire sale. What you see right here, this price of $79.99, that's pretty much what a lot of the Kickstarter backers did pay, because unless you were an early adopter, the early bird special, which usually that's limited to like 100 people, unless you got that one, I think it was 10 bucks cheaper, most people did pay $79 to get a unit delivered to them. And I did not pay that much though, because I only paid about 20 bucks. It seems that GameStop is having like a fire sale or something. I highly suspect that they're just clearing out inventory because the product is, I hate to use the word failure, but it's just not become feasible. So they've kind of just let go of it. And I've heard some rumblings on the forums before I made my purchase. I heard some rumblings that they've apparently stopped supporting this device. So I don't even think there's going to be any more updates for it. But either way, so it really just seems like they're clearing out inventory. Let's get this out of here. And for 20 bucks, I really can't imagine they're making any profit on this. Or even, breaking even. They're probably losing a little bit of money on each one, I would think. But then again, big corporation, very globalized production, so I wouldn't be surprised if they are making a couple bucks. But there's a big difference between $79 and $19.99. Anyways, though, a lot of these Android devices, they haven't really taken off. Even the Ouya, that was sort of a success, and you can still buy one, I believe. I think they even expanded into China now. But either way, they haven't really taken off and taken on the competition, like, the big three, that sort of thing. Before we go any further, let me explain that I've never owned an Android gaming console. I've sort of been aware of the Android gaming scene. I've been to a forum where they do have an Android section, and I go over there periodically and look at the discussion, so I'm aware of what Android is doing right now, but I've never really had a hands-on experience with it. The only Android device that I've really used on a daily basis was back when I had this, which is a Motorola Flip Out, I think it's called. Yeah, flip out. And so this is a cell phone that I had for a while. I had it for maybe a little less than 2 years, and I was okay with it. It uses like, I think Android 2.3, I think, which is apparently what the Byzantines were using. But overall, it was an okay phone. It was my first smartphone, so of course anything dazzled me at that point. But overall, it was an okay device, but I've never really had something for gaming. I also had a Novo 7 Paladin, and that thing was just so incredibly slow and buggy that I really got no use out of it, and it's sitting in a drawer somewhere. I couldn't find it, actually. But it's sitting somewhere in my apartment because I just could not get a use for it. I mean, there's just nothing that I could do with a device that was that buggy and slow. And so I have really been turned off on the Android scene for quite a while. And I've never really had a reason to go into Android because there's not really anything I want there. But at this price, I had to feed my curiosity. So I'm willing to give Android a shot. I'm not expecting the world. I know that this device has a lot of limitations. Of course, it's not as powerful as the Ouya. It's actually very underpowered from what I hear. But I don't really have any need to really push the hardware or, get into any of the very high-spec games out there. But either way, I really just want to give Android a chance, and I want to see if this sort of thing is the thing for me. Alright, let the unboxing commence. First of all, I really like it how a lot of these Kickstarter projects come with this really thick and durable cardboard. It's really bad if you're trying to ship it, which I'm finding out right now when I'm trying to get one of these to a friend overseas. But I like it that it's well protected. GameStick. Wow. Oh, it's the envelope letter thing. Let's see what it says. Ah, it's just instructions. I thought it would be like that little pamphlet that I always saw in Ouyas, in the Ouyas that would end up on eBay, saying, "Thank you for believing in us," or something like that. Alright, so yeah, it's just instructions in a lot of different languages. Put that to the side. Close up the knife so I don't kill myself. And there is the actual unit. This is actually kind of weird. God, I don't know what this fire sale is about because it's kind of dusty. I don't know, it's got like this... there's like this black felt material that's inside of here. And it's kind of on the analog nubs and everything. And also, you guys can see this is still in its plastic. Of course, I just opened this. But you can already tell that the unit is white, but the analog nubs, they have this aged look to them. I don't know, they've kind of yellowed a little bit, for lack of a better term. I don't know if that's normal. Oh well, you guys saw it here first. If I need to make a warranty claim, you guys can back me up. Alright. Okay, I guess we take it out like that. Alright. And I just press some buttons. No light up right there for the wireless controller, so I'm guessing that it comes in dead and then you have to recharge it. I'm guessing. Anyways, we'll put that out there. Let's see what comes in here. Alright, charger. USB connection. Ooh, and it uses that weird flat cable thing. Huh, that's nice. Oh, yeah, it says GameStick and stuff like that on there. Alright, so it has a little branding and everything. Okay. Let's see, that's micro USB to full USB. I guess that's for charging. Oh, this is HDMI. Okay. And again, it has branding. That's kind of weird. Branding on this side and then on this side. Strange. Okay, that's all that's in the box. What does it say right here? Inspired by 5,691 amazing people around the world. Designed by PlayJam. You see PlayJam in London. Made by experts in China. Okay, that's a little bit funny right there. But, yeah, it just seems very interesting. Alright. What do you think at GameStick.tv? Huh. That's kind of like one of those bumper stickers, you know, how's my driving? Well, GameStick, I think I will let you know. Maybe I'll send you this video. If you're still in business. Oh, and there's the actual GameStick itself. it kind of goes tucked into the controller, which I kind of like. That's a pretty neat little way of doing it. I gotta say the controller is a lot bigger than what I expected. I really expected it to be maybe, you know, that big. It's actually kind of big. It fits in your hands, which is pretty nice. The buttons feel a little cheap right now. Let me get it out of the plastic though. Let's see. Yeah, let's just tear it in. There we go. Yeah. Huh, that's really weird. The front part is like very shiny plastic, typical plastic that you always see. The back part though is kind of that really soft rubberized plastic. Really strange choice. Also, these two little parts right here, these two little metal parts, there's also a dock that you could get for the unit, and so I'm guessing that they use that to charge it. And maybe this is the on button. Let's see. Or maybe I'm not supposed to touch that. It's kind of tough too. Oh, wait. It brings out the GameStick. Okay. There we go. Huh. And it also retracts right here as a little flip door. Oh, that's kind of interesting. Here's the actual GameStick. It's a micro console, so they consider this to be the actual console of it. And then there's the micro USB. What looks like a reset switch. I can't read that. I don't think it says anything. I think those are just numbers up there. But then it has these little cutouts, which are actually really nice. They kind of almost seems like it was laser cut, but of course this is plastic, so I'm sure that the mold is just like that. But, okay, well that's kind of neat. Then it goes to an HDMI port. You just put that in the back of your TV, and that's how the thing works. I think also, I can't remember if I read online whether this is powered or not. I think it is powered. What I mean is, you know, the power comes through the HDMI. I think that's how it works, that then if your TV doesn't do that, then you go ahead and use this as well. And also, I think that's a micro SD slot, so that way you could put additional storage on there. Again, though, one of the things I can't get over, and that black stuff, it's on the nubs inside too. Maybe just from me touching it, but because it's kind of in other places too. But still, I kind of don't like that the, or I'm not even going to say kind of, I really don't like that the analog nubs, they're yellow, they're almost green, so maybe these have been in storage for a while, and like I said, fire sale, get all those units out there, sell them as cheap as you can. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that the unit is dead, unless maybe I hit this button called power. Nothing. Yeah, nothing. Also, the D-pad is terrible. Absolutely terrible. Not only is it very thick, it's very fat. It's a very fat D-pad. But it bottoms out very quickly. You might remember my review when I was talking about the Coleco Sonic, and how sometimes in the heat of gameplay, you might bottom out the unit, then you can't go left or right. Well, I mean, I don't know how this controls. I haven't played a game on it yet, of course, but it bottoms out instantly. No matter where your finger is, I could already feel that it's completely bottomed out as if you did this to it. No matter where your finger is. But, yeah, that's not going to be too good. Alright. It seems that it's also got buttons, you know, sort of similar to L3 and R3. The buttons, they seem really cheap, but they seem like they'll get the job done. They don't seem like they're too clicky or anything. They actually seem okay. But either way, there's not much that I could do with it right here. So we're going to go ahead and give this a spin, and we will see how it goes. Alright guys, I'm back. And I'm sorry if I don't sound like how I sounded in the unboxing part of this video. That's because I developed a really bad cough after that, and I think it's because of those nasty greenish yellow analog nubs that were on the GameStick. I mean, I know that it was built by experts, but I didn't expect them to be biological warfare experts. But either way, let's just move on. Now, setting up the GameStick, it was quite a headache. I mean, it involved resetting the system several times, and even some of the steps I had to redo. And it even caused my game capture to go out, so I'm not able to show you all of the steps and the constant restarts and all of that. I completely lost that footage. Alright, now once you get it going, the front end is okay. It supposedly is modeled after the Xbox 360 front end. I don't own an Xbox 360, so I can't say if it is or not, but it works pretty well. And the only problem though is that it is kind of buggy. It freezes at certain times, like when you're just normally navigating, through the games and checking out what it has, the controls will just freeze up. And for a while you think that the controller like got out of sync and then you have to resync it, but then it'll just like spasm back to life, and it gets really frustrating because, again, this is a simple menu. I mean, it couldn't get any simpler if it tried. So it really is frustrating when it just freezes out of the blue and then it kind of reawakens with a sneeze. And there are 7 free downloadable games on the GameStick store, so we're going to check out all of them. Let's get started. Okay, the first game we're going to try is the one that was actually featured on the GameStick store once I booted it up. It's like, their featured game right there, front and center. And it's called Audie Smog's Misadventure. But it should really be called Android Lag, the game. I don't know if there's a name for this kind of game, but it's one of those games where you're trying to climb, and the higher you get, the better your score is. So you're always trying to break your record and get higher. And the main problem, like I said, is just the Android lag. It absolutely cripples the game. And it's so frustrating because you know that you're hitting the button right on time and your jumps just aren't going anywhere because of it. And the main mechanic here is that your little guy, he sticks to these gears that are spinning around. So your timing has to be absolutely perfect, and the Android lag, it just absolutely kills this game. I always knew that Android systems, there was always talk that they do have lag, and that's something that really interferes with gameplay. I just didn't expect for the first game that I played for it to be like this. And it really does upset the whole balance of the game, because it basically adds some unneeded challenge there. It becomes part of the game's challenge to have to deal with this lag. So it totally makes the game completely unfun because it's completely unfair. Also, one of the worst things here is that the game requires a lot of luck, because if you're just bouncing from one gear to the next, then trust me, you're not really going to go very far, because again, just that lag is going to catch up to you. It's also a problem that the gears run at different speeds, so it's incredibly hard to get the timing down right. But even more importantly, the best way that you could actually get to higher levels is when you go into these little spaceships and then they just rocket you upwards. So that really is the best way, and in my opinion, the only way that you could get up very high. So if you're going to beat your score, it really depends on a lot of luck. To me, the levels seem to be randomly generated, so it's pretty random and also up to luck as to whether you even get those spaceships when you need them. If I could say something good about this game, it's that the music is absolutely brilliant. It has a great melody to it. Every time I hear it, I keep imagining a silent film that like takes place in a butcher shop or something. It sounds really good. And lastly, I have to criticize this game because it's a one-button game. The whole GameStick controller, it only uses one button and the left analog stick, that's it. And that really seems like a waste. Why does this game exist on the GameStick if it's just going to use one button and the analog stick? It doesn't make any sense. Anyways, the next game is Stalagflight. Now this is an incredibly fun game. It's another one of the climbing games, and this one is just incredibly well done. And I'm absolutely not good at it at all, but I don't care. I really like it. The best thing is that the lag is not noticeable at all. And you know what, that's something that I was really unprepared for with the whole Android thing. Like I said, this is the first time I've really played with Android. So, as I said with the last game, I knew that Android lag was there, and Audie Smog's Misadventure was probably the worst game to start with, because it really left a bad taste in my mouth, and I was like, oh geez, they're all gonna have lag. But Stalagflight really has no noticeable lag. It's a great game. I mean, I didn't really notice any lag with the controls, and that was a really refreshing experience right there. Stalagflight is very addictive, and it's really interesting to compare it to the game that we just played before, because they're both very similar. They're both climbing games, they both only use one button and the analog stick, but just the enjoyment is completely different. With this, it's easy to get into the game, it's easy to know when you died, then you restart instantly. It's just so well done. The thing that makes this game so good is really just that lack of Android lag, because when you don't have that lag, the gameplay is very fair. So it really is just testing your skill, and you can get better and better without it giving you a cheap death or being very inconsistent. But there's the difference. I'm bad at Stalagflight, but I want to get better. With Audie Smog's Misadventure, I don't know if I can get better, and I don't really want to, because the game's going to be unfair either way. So that's the difference between these two games and why Stalagflight is so much better. Next we have Diversion. This is the most appropriately named game here, because it really is just a diversion from anything else in your life that's more important and enjoyable. You know, stuff like watching paint dry, or counting the grains of salt in your salt shaker one by one. This game is painfully boring. In all the pictures and everything, it looks like a 3D platformer, kind of like Mario 64. And in fact, the platforms remind me of Jumping Flash, which is one of my favorite games on the original PlayStation, but this game is nothing like that. It's actually a 2.5D platformer, and all you do is jump, and you can vary your speed just a little bit. It commits the GameStick's greatest sin: it's a one-button game. The game has a really weird vibe to it also. It's really hyper-energetic, and it's trying to get you energized to play it. It really looks creepy. And it also has bonus items that you could get, which are totally useless and very, very stupid. And there's like 100 of them. You know, why did they sink so much time into all those bonus items when they could just made a better game? It really baffles me. This game really makes me distrust the GameStick store, because again, the pictures looked okay. It looked like a pretty fun game. And so maybe if this game was 99 cents or something, I would pay for it. But trust me, even at 99 cents, I would have felt ripped off. So that really makes me question whether I want to pay for something on the GameStick store, because it's probably not going to be worth it. Next we have Space Axe, which refuses to play because it's multiplayer only. That makes it impossible for me to play it. Not because I don't have any friends, but just because if I lured a friend over with the GameStick, then that would probably seriously jeopardize that friendship. This is another example of how you can't trust the GameStick store, because you could say that in fairness it does tell you that it is multiplayer, but Stalagfly is also multiplayer, and I could play that single player if I want to, so really, unless I really paid attention, there's no other way that I can know that this was multiplayer only. I should also mention that they have this cute little logo for the GameStick controller, and yeah, it looks adorable, it looks kind of like WALL-E, but then you actually look at the controller itself, and you notice that it looks nothing like that. In fact, it looks more like this, which has a lot more added dirt. Next we have Smash Cops. Now this is a really fun game. I like the graphic style, it's really well done, and the over-the-head view, it looks like a high-speed chase from a newscopter. It looks really good. They really spent some time having fun with this one. And also there's no lag, which you would expect to see in a game that looks this good, but it actually plays really well. Now it only takes advantage of a few buttons on the GameStick controller, but you could tell that this game benefited from having a physical analog stick, and I can't imagine playing it without it. What I can definitely imagine though is maybe seeing this game as a budget title on the PSP, and guess what, I would buy it. It really reminded me of the vigilante missions in Grand Theft Auto 3, and I played the hell out of those. It has a surprising amount of depth and variety to it. It is my favorite game on the GameStick. It looks great on a TV, it plays great with physical controls, it's perfect for this kind of device. Next we have Killzone Shadowgun. This is the first entry for the Killzone series onto the Android platform, and it's probably the most ambitious title for the GameStick. It's an over-the-shoulder shooter, kind of similar to Gears of War. Just like Smash Cops, you would think that this is the perfect game that you could give physical controls to, and it is, but with the GameStick, the lag makes the controls feel floaty, and that makes it difficult to aim, which, you know, is something important in a game where all you're doing is shooting things. The walls also feel magnetic because this is a cover-based game, so it always defaults to you leaning against a wall or behind a crate or something, and that makes it really hard to pull off a shot when you're trying to, you know, just maneuver yourself so you could get a good shot in without getting shot yourself. It also doesn't have any hand grenades, at least at the point that I got up to, and that would have really helped me out in a lot of situations. It's also really buggy at times, and it froze on me once. But the biggest problem is that the action just lacks variety. You encounter wave after wave of the same enemies at predetermined points, and you just move from one checkpoint to the next, which are computers in this case. I only played a few stages, and I did get to the first boss fight, and that was pretty cool. It was different, and the boss was pretty interesting, but I could tell that that was the exception rather than the rule, because right after that, it was back to the usual. This game is okay, but really I'd rather be playing something else. Sony, you've really done a disservice to the Killzone franchise. If you don't clean up your act, I'm gonna have to break a beer bottle over your head or something. Lastly, we have Vendetta Online. I had high hopes for this game because I'm a big fan of Elite, but I couldn't play it because of internet connection issues. The Wi-Fi on the GameStick sucks, and just so that you know, my router is maybe about 15 feet away from where the GameStick was. I don't really care though, because I was able to play the training mission, and after I played that, I can already tell that I wouldn't have liked it anyways. All you do is steer the ship, and you don't even aim your guns, you just tell your guns who to shoot, and then they'll go ahead and shoot it for you. So really it's kind of like you're a chauffeur and you're doing space drive-bys. That's really what they should have called it, space drive-by. When you're going through the menus here, your left analog stick becomes the virtual mouse, and this is a perfect opportunity to show off the worst of the GameStick's lag. This really is as bad as it gets, and I can't imagine playing any other game that's as bad as this. Now of course these aren't the only games that you could play, I only tried the free ones. You're locked into the GameStick front end, so it's not like you could go out and get any game that you want. The store actually has a lot of retro indie games on there, and I mean really that's what I'm after. But when I went online and I tried to add funds, they only allow you to add them in $5 increments. So of course, I mean, that's very anti-consumerist. Really, they just want you to buy more crap, so that's why they make it in those increments. Especially for me, because I only wanted to try Shell Quest 2000 because I love the Game Boy aesthetics. And it only cost $1.99. So I had to find other games that total up to $5. I found Blue Kid and Pixin Rush, which looked really good. But guess what? I can't add funds. I could do it online, but I went ahead and just altered some of the settings to see if they're even communicating between, GameStick and my online account, and they're not communicating at all. So there's no point to me putting funds on the account if the GameStick isn't going to know that they're there, and therefore I can't buy anything. Blue Kid looks really cool, but then I found out that I could get a free ad-supported version on the iPhone, so I tried it out there, and to be honest, I'm glad I didn't buy it. Same thing goes for Pixin Rush. I thought that one looked really interesting. But again, I found a free version for the iPhone, which was Pixin Rush Lite, and I'm really glad that I didn't buy that one either. And as I found out later, Shell Quest is free on the Google Play Store. Like I said earlier, one of the biggest problems with the GameStick games is that you can't trust if any of them are good. Now I remember back when the Ouya was doing its Kickstarter campaign, one of the things they always harped on is that you could always try out the games for free. Every game would have a demo. And to be honest, at the time, I always thought that that was just a marketing ploy, because most of these games are so simple that a demo is pretty much half the game. When you buy the full game, that's pretty much just an expansion, A good example of that is Pixin Rush. Like I said, I was able to get a light version on my iPhone, and if I want to get the full version, I just pay the full price. Now I'm sure if an Android developer was watching this, they would probably say that, oh well, you're part of the problem, you see. That's why it's so hard to make a buck in the Android scene. That's why developers are going out of business. That's why we can't have nice things. But I disagree. I'll admit that I am part of the problem, but the bigger problem is that the Android store just has so many pitfalls where people are going to take your money and give you a subpar game. So that's actually the bigger problem than anything, and that's why you can't blame the consumer for not opening his wallet. Another thing I wanted to mention was that the GameStick gets very hot when you're using it. Even after using it for just about an hour, it'll still get pretty hot to the touch. And that makes me very nervous about using the dock because there's no off button on the GameStick. In order to turn it off, all you do is disconnect it. Either way, I wouldn't feel comfortable leaving this thing plugged in overnight. As I said earlier, the GameStick, it started as a Kickstarter project. So I've got to talk about that, but I will say that I was not a backer, so I'm not too familiar with all the updates and everything. I'm just going off of what I know from what other backers have said, and just from little news tidbits I've gotten here and there. One thing that I can confirm though is that probably the funniest update that they put on there is this video which showed the R&D and testing of the completed prototypes, and I've got to say that is total robot porn. If you guys are looking to see a robot make passionate love to the GameStick, and I am absolutely certain that you want to see that because you've subscribed to this channel, then you've got to see that. And on another note that's not so funny, of course with Kickstarter, the backers, they really want to see updates, because that's how they know that their money is being put to good use and the project is continuing, they're not going to get ripped off. And unfortunately, GameStick did have some problems in that area, I've heard, because there were some legal issues with the dock, which I don't really understand, and I think they were very vague about it. But anyways, they made the excuse that they can't talk about anything with the GameStick unless that dock issue was resolved, and eventually it was. But there was a time when there was absolute silence to the Kickstarter backers where they just weren't updating them, and I gotta say that's really bad on their part. It really doesn't show that they're appreciated at all, and the Kickstarter backers made that known, so I guess you could look that up if you want to take a look at what happened there. And it seems that that silence is GameStick corporate policy because they haven't updated the website at all since February of this year. And that just confirms to me that they're not supporting it anymore. It doesn't seem like anybody's working on it, so whatever bugs are in there, they're yours to keep. But strangely, on their homepage, it still shows the device as $79. So that makes me think that the fire sale is GameStop's, not GameStick's. So if you pre-ordered the GameStick on Kickstarter and now you regret it, don't regret it too much, because I'm pretty sure there's a GameStop executive who did see that pitch video on the Kickstarter page, and he pre-ordered thousands of these things, and now he's got a warehouse full of them that are unsold. So trust me, there are other people that regret the decision even more. Now about this device, it's actually nothing new. These devices have existed for quite a while, and we used to call them Android on a stick devices. And that's because, yeah, it is a little circuit board, you know, about the size of a pack of gum, and it's on a stick that you just connect to your TV or PC monitor. GameStick is really just the first one to get a Western audience because it was on Kickstarter. But the idea of a device like this is actually pretty old, no matter what they tell you in the pitch video. I wasn't planning on ever getting one of these devices, but at $20 that is a great price for any Android on a stick. And let me tell you that, especially with Ouya, which was the first real Android TV console to come to the market, and it took a ton of heat from people online, but let me just say they deserved every ounce of it, because they really were not solid at all. They just came out swinging. And it's the same thing with the GameStick. And they really trumped it up to make it seem like if the big three has this monopoly over, you know, gamers, and their console is suddenly gonna go ahead and break that. But I don't think they really realized that rather than trying to share something good with the public, they were really putting the public down. Because, for instance, my generation, I grew up with Nintendo always there. It was always a competition between Nintendo and Sega, you know, PlayStation, Xbox, everything like that. Consoles have always been a very constant force for me as a gamer, and I think that's the same way with a lot of people who are commenting online. So when these old codgers go on Kickstarter and they're saying that, oh, well, you guys are idiots, you've been doing it wrong this whole time, I'm going to show you how it's done, then of course they took offense to it, and of course they're going to go into the comments and just wail on these machines and talk about how they're going to fail. Even worse, after they succeeded, it kind of turned gamer against gamer. Because here's the thing. It's one thing to have a device that you want to bring to the market, something that you think is a good idea, and it's another thing when the public throws $8 million at you. And part of it might have been jealousy among gamers because, again, every gamer has some franchise or some device that they wish would get funded, and then when this seemingly stupid device gets $8 million, I think that a lot of that incites anger that why are these people getting $8 million and this other thing that I'm passionate about is struggling to get off the ground. So of course that led to fights between the Ouya backers and people who thought that it was a piece of junk, and any time that was brought up, you know that it was going to be a flame war. Now at that time I was pretty critical of Android TV consoles, but these days I don't care, I just spectate, because it's even more entertaining to watch the war between these consoles than it is to actually play the games on the devices. I even have a name for it, I call it the Android Wars. So who do I think is going to win the Android Wars? Well, to be honest, I think none of the above are going to win, because I just don't think the consumer is ready to pay $100 for the privilege of playing cell phone games on their TV. $100 is still $100 last time I checked. The whole thing about these Android consoles is that they always said that they would be invading your living room, that they would, you know, be part of your TV. So really that is how I see it progressing. I think that Android TV consoles are going to evolve to where they're just included in TVs. The Roku is a good example. It's a TV streaming box and it has a little controller with it too. And I could totally see that happening if it isn't happening already. If you go to Best Buy, I could totally see them selling a TV where, you know, it's a $500 TV and for $50 extra you get a gaming controller with it. And think about it, that's very convenient, which is exactly what the consumer wants. So if the consumer is ready to invite Android games into their living room, I think that's where it's going to happen. Not with these little devices that you add to your TV, but whether the consumer makes the choice to spend the extra $50 or however much it would be to get the smart TV, which has a game controller with it, so that way he could keep his kid happy. Now I've got to talk about an article that was on Gizmodo last week, and it's entitled 7 Spectacular Crowdfunding Fails. And guess what? The GameStick is on there. So according to the author of that article, they are a failure. But to me, I'm a little bit more hesitant to say that because they actually did deliver a product, which is a lot more than other entries on that list could say. But let's take a look at the first 20 seconds of that Kickstarter pitch that they did.
So we were really frustrated by the TV gaming space. It was really clunky. It was big consoles, big controllers, wires everywhere, and the ecosystems were completely closed. So we wanted to blow that apart with a really beautiful product, something really simple, really elegant, on a completely open operating environment. We call it GameStick.
Now he starts off talking about hardware and wires and big controllers and how that's a big inconvenience. And I'd have to say that with that they did sort of succeed, because the GameStick is just a little device that plugs into your TV, the controller uses Bluetooth, so in a way they did succeed on that ground. But my argument would be that I would totally put up with wires if that means that the GameStick doesn't get very hot after playing it for an hour. At the end of his pitch, he promises that he's going to make it an open system, and that closed systems are the bane of the Android market. As you know, I don't have any experience with the Android market, and I'm betting that a lot of the backers didn't either. So with the language that they used, I thought that it was going to be an open system. In other words, one that's not locked down to the GameStick front end. And let's take a look at some of the language that they used throughout that video.
So we were really frustrated by the TV gaming space. Ecosystems were completely closed, so we wanted to blow that apart on a completely open operating environment. We call it GameStick. You've got a really open, vibrant platform on mobile, and you've got a closed network on console. And PlayJam simply is trying to break that ecosystem.
The thing I always think about with the GameStick is not only its affordability, but its accessibility. Very, very accessible. Really being able to access the television through more accessible, more affordable devices. And
What we've created that we think can be truly disruptive for the games industry.
I think it's pretty easy to say that they broke that promise, and maybe some people will call it a failure because of that. They didn't deliver on what they said they would. But for me, I look at the success or failure of a Kickstarter project in terms of whether the project was able to survive the Kickstarter campaign. In other words, after the backers had already gotten their products, did the company survive? Did the product survive in the marketplace? Obviously, this device did not take off, so I'm pretty confident in saying that it did fail. But I think that the reason that the GameStick failed is the same reason why other Android consoles aren't doing too well, and that's because they don't have a killer app. Consumers are always going to be distrustful of new hardware, and they should be. A great example is the original Xbox. Let me tell you, the Xbox would not have gotten anywhere had it not been for Halo, because Halo was its killer app. It didn't matter that people distrust new hardware. What mattered is that Halo was such a good game, everybody wanted to play it, and the only way you could play it was on an Xbox. So in order to play that game, you had to trust Microsoft, and you had to get an Xbox in order to play it. For these Android consoles, what they need is a must-play Android title that can only be played with physical controls. In other words, they need to worry about being a game console before they start thinking about making a cash grab on the Android scene. But that also points to a bigger problem that I'm not sure these Android devices can overcome. These games aren't designed with physical controls in mind. It makes perfect sense to design an Android game which uses touch controls because that's 99% of your market. But that's also what keeps these Android consoles from taking off. So let me give you my final thoughts. Was this a failure? Well, at $79, I would be very disappointed if I was a Kickstarter backer. As basically a $20 backer, I've got to say this is a pretty fair deal for just including Smash Cops and Stalag Flight alone. It really depends on how much you paid for it and what your expectations were. The hardware itself isn't too bad. Of course the D-pad is terrible, it feels like they carved it out of a bar of soap, and it's really unnecessary because I don't think any of the games I tested required it. So the biggest problem for me is that the software is so closed. But thankfully, there is a solution. Because you see, some people who are way smarter than me, they found out a way to go ahead and crack this device, so that way it could be open just like any other Android device. And that's exactly what I was looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. The instructions are pretty simple, and I'll even leave a link at the bottom. And who knows, maybe I'll even make an update to this video. But that's all I've got for today. I'll see you guys next time.